The three cable news networks were live when Kyle Rittenhouse took the stand in Kenosha, where he's charged with homicide in the fatal shooting of two people and also wounded a third during the riot there last year. And the 18-year-old defendant, widely reviled by the media, broke down.
In front of me with Mr. Zeminski, and there were
With regard to Joseph Rosenbaum, you fired 4 shots at him, correct?
Yes.
You intended to kill him, correct?
I didn't intend to kill him. I intended to stop the person who was attacking me and trying to steal my gun.
As prosecutors ran into all kinds of problems, that prompted some hasty reassessments in the press.
The media were completely wrong about Kyle Rittenhouse. They slandered an innocent kid, but they're not admitting it.
I think it's pretty likely he'll be acquitted, honestly. But there's also the broader question of what kind of society we want to live in.
Joining us now is Andy McCarthy, contributing editor at National Review and a Fox News contributor. Andy, has most of the press been surprised, if not stunned, by the trial testimony and the evidence presented that Kyle Rittenhouse might well have shot these 3 people in self-defense?
Yeah, I think that's right. Unfortunately, Howie, a trial's not a morality play. It's like a real life concrete dispute. And I think we see again and again with a lot of these cases, particularly when there's a lot of political baggage brought to them, people tend to, and the media is the biggest culprit here, they tend to assign roles to the people who are in the case that fit whatever the political narrative they want to impose on it is. And unfortunately, for that perspective, the 4 quarters of the trial is a real life dispute, and things are not black and white, and people are not like characters in a play. And the reason they act is because of the things that they, confront in a situation.
Yes,
not
and you know
political
that,
narrative.
and you know that as a former federal prosecutor. Let me play for you just a couple of the sound bites of the coverage last year after the tragedy in Kenosha to get a flavor of it. Take a look.
It's not good that a 17-year-old vigilante, arguably a domestic terrorist, picked up a rifle, drove to a different state to shoot people. Kyle Rittenhouse is the enemy.
Plus, ABC News called Rittenhouse an alleged white supremacist. A Daily Beast writer lumped the, quote, murderer in with armed militias and white power groups. Was there a massive rush to judgment by much of the media here?
Yeah, there is no evidence in the record. The trial now went on for 8 days of sworn evidence. He's a 17-year-old kid who dropped out of high school in Antioch, Illinois, lives part of the time, I think, with a father who lives in Kenosha, works in Kenosha. There's no evidence that he's a white supremacist. There's no evidence that he's a pro-cop guy, which in parts of the media is unpopular. And this was left-wing rioting, so, we're all assigned our roles in these things. But, the fact of the matter is most of the things that you would think you knew about this trial when you sat down to watch it turn out not to be true.
Yeah. You've written that, it was hardly a brilliant move for this high school dropout to take an AR-15 and go over to Kenosha and break the curfew there, and he had the gun illegally, so that we shouldn't paint him as a hero. And I agree with that. That was a dumb move. But he's still entitled to a fair trial, not trial by media.
Yeah, I think about it in terms of my own sons, Howie. When they were 17, if they went and got themselves involved in something like this, they'd have a big problem with me. I mean, I would be very angry at them. At the same time, if they got themselves into trouble, I think any parent and any American should want them to have all of the due process rights that they're entitled to. And the state shouldn't be able to convict them unless they can actually prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did the things he's charged with. And it looks like that's going to be a very tough row to hoe for them.
Some liberal commentators are still not sort of letting go of their original narrative about Kyle Rittenhouse. Just the other night, MSNBC's Joy Reid, I want to play this, compared him to the long history of vigilantes and slave owners and lynch mobs. Take a look.
Should we really be surprised? The 17-year-old Proud Boys fan believed that he had the perfect right to cross state lines and protect property with the AR-15 he got because he thought it was cool.
So such pundits are sticking to their story here.
Yeah, but I was a prosecutor for a long time, and in the last 10 years or so of my career, I prosecuted terrorists. And it was the proud boast of the system that even terrorists, even people who wanted to mass murder Americans, we would bring them into court, and we were proud of the fact that we would give them a fair trial and not convict them because they were, villains in an ideological play, or because we didn't like them, but because we had evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to convict them of what they were charged. I don't know why we would treat Americans differently.
Yeah, exactly. You've called the prosecution case here stunningly weak. Does it matter that they were scolded by the judge, or is that just theatrics for the cameras?
Well, I think we shouldn't get a cribbed idea of who the judge is on the basis of a few incidents where he's yelling at the prosecutors, who did do things that provoked the judge. Mm-hmm. The judge has also made rulings that have been favorable to the prosecution, including keeping the misdemeanor gun possession in the case, allowing them to make arguments that would undermine the self-defense defense. So, it's a more complicated picture. I think where the prosecutors got reamed out by the judge, they deserved it.
Bottom line, I've got about half a minute, Andy, is that, when there's a televised trial, at least part of a televised, everybody gets to pick sides. Well, Rittenhouse was being a great actor. No, he was really broken up. But it comes down to, does he meet the standard, the legal standard for self-defense? And that's what will go to the jury, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's one of those weird cases, Howie, that it's more of a legal dispute than a factual one. We're pretty clear on what happened here. The question is, legally, does he have a self-defense defense? I think he does, but the prosecutors are going to try to say that because, for example, the gun was illegal, maybe he waives his right to defend himself. I don't think that's persuasive, but that's where they're going.
And we'll see that with closing arguments starting tomorrow. Andy McCarthy, thanks so much for stopping by this Sunday.